All right. So once again, I'm Andrew King, editor-in-chief of Canadian Musician, and this is Run a Successful Remote Songwriting Session. Joining us for this one, again, Karen Kosowski, very versatile writer, producer, engineer, based in Nashville, but a Canadian. And just recently, huge congrats, by the way, signed a co-publishing deal with Sony ATV. She has worked with, written for the likes of Brett Kissel, Tim Hicks, Guyton in LA. They've got some current collabs that we'll hear about momentarily. Madeline Merlot, our friend Emily, Washboard Union, a whole list. And KarenKosowski.com will throw that up at the end as well. You can check out some of her work and, of course, how to get in touch if you think you may want to collaborate with the decorated hitmaker. Yes, Karen has had a lot of success in the country and pop worlds. I'm buttering your bread while you're there and listen. But yeah, had a lot of success in the country and pop worlds, but very well versed in a number of different styles. And yeah, we'll get into some expertise here. Again, I'm Andrew. I edit Canadian Musician. We've got a number of other magazine titles, and yeah, really like bringing these webinars to you. So thank you very much for joining us as usual. So we're talking about remote songwriting, remote collaboration. So just a quick overview of what we're covering. First, we're going to talk about the basics, getting your session set up, kind of what to expect, where other people in the whole co-writing world. I mean, we're looking down in Nashville, kind of the North American hub for the music industry in this type of work. But you're going to be able to put these tips into practice wherever you are. Then we'll get into a little bit about what you need for your tech setup, kind of the basic setup, and then ways that you can upgrade for not too much money that'll probably make a difference just in streamlining and upping the quality of your sessions. We'll talk about the practicalities of running your session, how it differs from an in-person co-write. We'll share a handful of other tips and yeah, just get Karen's thoughts on what's going to go on with this new trend once we're on the other side of this thing. Yeah, get into that shortly. So here we go, getting the session set up. And before I jump in, if I can just hold off for one more second. Karen, thank you so much for joining us. Fill us in a bit on some of the project. What's been keeping you busy? Here we are, late July. Things are just sort of still coming back online.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. And I've just been really super busy. Nashville is still chugging away. You know, people want to make noise. People want to express themselves. People want to say things in songs and get out the emotions that we're all having right now. So doing a lot of writes, and I have a couple different EP projects on the go. One is with Guyton. She's actually holed up in isolation, has been for the last few months in her apartment in LA. So we've been doing a lot of not just writing, but actually tracking her vocals over Zoom with her in her apartment there. And she was really lucky right near the beginning of the pandemic. She kind of got proactive really fast and was like, I want to order a microphone and get a laptop and be able to do this. And what should I get? And I've told other artists this now, like she ordered her stuff right away and got it. But other artists have gone to look for the same microphone and the same audio interface, and now they're back ordered. So Mickey was really proactive and got on it, which was good. So we've been, cutting vocals and finishing, like doing entire tracks remotely, which has been really, really cool to be able to keep going and making music that's coming out and has come out during this period. And I'm working with a young country artist from Canada named Carly June. And we've had an EP that we've been writing for over the last few months, and now we're also progressing into okay, let's record vocals. You can't come down to Nashville anytime soon, so let's set you up with your own vocal tent in your bedroom and and a microphone, and figure out where you should stand and get the right sound. And yeah, it takes flexibility, but I think I kind of love that kind of challenge. It's fun.
Oh, right on. Yeah, if anything, we're a resilient bunch in the music community. Unfortunately, that resiliency seems to get tested a bit too often, but maybe that's a talk for another day. Um,
Yeah,
Awesome.
and
Well, yeah, I
agreed.
guess we were talking about recording like actual tracks here with full setups, but we will get into because during the writing process, a lot of times that kind of coincides with the demoing process where you're still exchanging files that you want to be high quality. So we will get into a little bit of that file transfer, good tech setup shortly. But here, let's get to the basics here. So, Karen, drawing from your experience, especially maybe over the last few weeks or months, like after the initial sort of confusion, everyone was trying to find their footing. Now that things have seemed to have fallen into a bit of a routine in Nashville, like, give us a little idea about how you go about arranging your sessions. I guess starting with the basics, like say you come up, got a project, you and another writer. Give us an idea about just how you go about setting up. I was going to say Zoom call. We'll hear in a second that it usually is Zoom, but yeah, walk us through just that first few steps into setting up a session.
Yeah, I mean, the whole sort of scheduling is all the same. You're still just juggling schedules, except some people have a little bit more time and more
Mhm.
flexibility right now. Um, but it's very much still just, tossing around dates, pinning down a time when you're all going to meet, except that now no one's coming to my studio. And, I send out a Zoom link, um, you know, sometimes the night before, sometimes, 10 minutes before. Um, it's never really the same. It just depends on who happens to be hosting, and sometimes someone will offer before the other person does. And like on Zoom, there's a 40-minute limit if you don't have a pro account. So early on, I just signed up for the pro account, and that just erased that challenge. But we tried FaceTime and other things, but it seemed like Zoom just flowed the easiest for everyone. So I
Mhm.
think I haven't really been using any other platform at this point. It's all been Zoom.
Okay. And then within that, like, I think folks are probably familiar with it by now, just interfacing with family and everything. It seems to be sort of the ubiquitous platform for lots. But, it wasn't necessarily built for a lot of what people are using it for right now. Just generally speaking, like, are there advantages to Zoom versus like FaceTime or Skype? Are there any challenges inherent in the platform that maybe we won't fault it for it, but just things to keep in mind as sort of a workaround?
There's some there I haven't used Skype that much, to be honest, because before this
Mhm.
pandemic, I just like avoided writing online like the plague, like, which is a bad joke for this pandemic. uh but yeah, like, I mean, I can't really say that I've got a lot of expertise with the other formats trying to write songs through them. With Zoom, it's great that you can just easily mute yourself if you need to like go and work an idea for a bit on your own. Um, there are also some advanced settings if you log in on your browser to your Zoom account and start digging in deep. There's like you can actually set it to send stereo audio, which is way
Mhm.
better if you're like myself, where you might want to be trying to stream a bit of audio to your co-writers, whether it be like something I'm playing on a keyboard or playing a little beat in Logic or something. That makes a bit of a difference. And I think some of the noise canceling options are better. Although I've heard various things about actually turning off some of those features when you're trying to play audio, because sometimes it's so good that it actually clamps down on the audio completely. So if you're having trouble with that, you should play with those settings in the advanced settings of your audio. Um,
Oh, great
that's
pro
about it.
tip. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'll jump in just because we touched on that actually with our live streaming session with Dan Mangan and Laura Simpson the other week. But yes, Zoom has a feature where enable original audio, and that will send uncompressed your feed as best as it can over the connection, as opposed to, as you were just saying, stomping on it to try and make it more accessible. Like, yeah, I'd say in Nashville, it's pretty much anywhere else. Like, I think audio is so much more important than video, whether you're watching a live performance or trying to have a conference here. So great tip. And yeah, one that came up last time we were chatting. So I guess the last question then is, like, in your world in Nashville with the types of folks that you're typically collaborating with, is it the case that like pretty much everyone now has migrated and kind of accepted that this has got to be done virtually? Are there any holdouts? Have there been any hiccups in trying to get things arranged?
I've never had anyone be upset about writing on Zoom. I think here in Nashville, it's all come down to everyone's individual comfort level.
Hmm.
I know that there are people still doing some in-person writes, or who are really eager to get going and doing that. For myself, I don't feel like we're there yet, and I'm way more comfortable just keeping writes on Zoom until things change.
Right on. Okay, so let's jump into some of the nitty gritty here. So, and I guess we can kind of see your lay of the land a little bit. But yeah, let's talk about the basic tech setup here. So, admittedly, I'm coming at everybody just straight from a laptop, built-in microphone, built-in camera. Uh, is that workable for this type of work? Again, if we're not talking album tracking, but just writing, demoing, is that what a lot of people are using? Have you seen folks kind of go out and get maybe a basic USB mic just to elevate that a little bit?
Absolutely. Most people are on their laptop with just their laptop audio, or they've got their earbuds in and they're talking, on the little mic on their
Mhm.
earbuds. Um, most artists and most top liners are just in that situation. For myself, when this whole thing started, I was like, how much production is going to be practical to do in a session?
Yeah.
How much might I want to be able to throw at people? Um, and I kind of went on a deep dive of like trying to figure out what my options were, how to be as flexible in a Zoom write as I try to be in the room. Like sometimes we just write around a guitar or a piano if that's what the artist is feeling or the
Hmm.
song requires. But oftentimes now I'm putting together some level of a track, even if it's something more stripped down, or maybe we're having to pump a really big beat and everyone's jamming on that. Um, so I was trying to adjust, and I find as a producer, it's it can help if you use a few other options. I see you have on the on the display there, like the loop back audio routing. That's something I got into in terms of using loopback, which is a third party uh, program, and I can take audio from uh, my audio interface, and like I can be playing an electric guitar or talking to a microphone like this, and actually combining that kind of audio with audio from Logic and any other sources that I have plugged in, and send it all into Zoom. And that I found made it easier to get a better quality sound or get an amped electric guitar sound while I was playing live.
Right.
And just gave me some control that way. But again, like I find I'm not really producing like full out tracks in a writing session because, on Zoom, if three people start talking over each other, you can't hear anything. So there's only so much you can do anyways. So I try to just keep it like helpful, but not like overbearing. And, loop back helps with that. Audio movers. I've heard of some people using audio movers to generate a much higher quality uh, stream of audio for their co-writers to hear,
Right.
which they open in a browser alongside Zoom. Um, it just depends kind of on what you need to do.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, as you said there, as I understand it, so with audio movers, then it's sort of like you as the like in the studio in the hub can send a link to a collaborator. They come onto that browser window, and then they're getting a very high quality. I was going to say stream, which I guess is right, but a basic feed of what is going on your system. But yeah, I mentioned, and Karen was circling around this, that with public broadband, at least, as a lot of us had to learn early on in the pandemic here, it's not fast enough in pretty much any case that you can do a real time jam where two people from remote locations are playing in sync. And thus, there's always going to be a little bit of a lag that's going to prevent that. So as we're learning here, you can nonetheless have a fluid discussion, but then you will be either like through audio movers sending a direct feed, or you might bounce out a track or a basic beat to kind of share with everybody, and then they're working with that foundation. I guess maybe the question here is then, tell us about some of the different means of like getting even a reference track out to other people. You mentioned you might create a basic beat, maybe just a really beat and bass line to get things going. Someone else might bust out an acoustic, but how do you keep the file sharing fluid so that everyone does have the same audio, but you're not tripping all over each other?
So what I've ended up finding useful is I might play in like a little bit of a beat and maybe a piano progression or something. And usually it's just fine for me to be streaming that through Zoom. People can get enough of an idea of what's going on, even though Zoom sometimes kind of dips and sounds like a warped record. People can get an idea of what's going on. But the challenge, and when I start sending a file to someone, the challenge is when that artist wants to sing along, or you want to hear that artist sing along with that actual track in time. There's
Right.
just no way to do that in real time from two opposite ends. So, I've done all sorts of things like bouncing out, here's the verse and the chorus. It's a little MP3 and I toss it into, iMessage, and they get it on their end, and then they're playing it back like on their phone, and we can all hear them doing that on their end. And then they just sing along with that in the air. And literally that's like, oh, now that's what that sounds like. Otherwise there's just no way to do it. I've also early on, I know there were a couple times where I was just playing something on a guitar, and Mickey, I was writing with Mickey in LA, and we came up with this thing where I just played, but muted one of us. We muted ourselves, or she muted me, or I muted her. Can't remember now exactly how we did it, but basically then she muted herself. I played guitar. She was getting my guitar, and she sang along to it on her phone and recorded a voice memo, and then texted that to us. So we could hear that. And that was kind of our work tape, actually, when we first started. It was just like, okay, we can hear the song basically now, even though you could hear my signal, my guitar coming through Zoom was like, sometimes,
Yeah.
And then after the fact, that's where I start to get into like, okay, if the artist has a way to record a vocal on their end and they have a microphone and an audio interface, because we need to get a vocal for a demo, that's when I get into like, okay, I've printed a bit of a track or enough of the track, the whole song form. Can you do a bunch of vocal takes and send them back to me? Or we hop on Zoom and I produce their vocal takes, that way. Or if they don't have a vocal chain or any kind of setup at home, we've had creative solutions like, okay, listen to the track I'm sending you on headphones off your laptop, and then sing into your voice memos. Go somewhere, the deadest room you have in your house, and sing into your phone along in time with the track, just your vocal, and then send me that voice memo. So I just get a voice memo that's just the artist singing into their phone, and then I line that up with my track and use that as basically a placeholder for a vocal. Use a lot of Isotope RX on it and just try to make it sound like something so that we have, a demo that can represent the song.
There you go. And then I guess that you can just keep building off of then. So, all right. So it sounds like there's just some extra steps and workarounds here, but that I guess the more that you're doing it, the more kind of comfortable you are recognizing what might be the optimal solution or best way to get something done.
Yeah. And I think everyone kind of has patience for the process now. Like everyone knows that, okay, this is going to be a little different. We'll figure it out, and people are sort of learning from all the different sessions they have with different people, picking up different things along the way.
Yeah. Okay. One more here, and we'll jump to our first round of questions. If anyone wants to throw some at Karen, throw them into the chat window. You did just kind of touch on this, but just to have it clear and out front. So even if the people you're working with, like you're in your studio, very comfortable hub, you've got access to all of your tools. So like, yeah, you're generating beats. You can be the one sort of orchestrating the whole thing. Um, but yeah, as far as then as someone's basic setup, I've got to think, sure, it's helpful if they've got a basic interface or even just a direct USB mic that'll be a little better than the built-in laptop. But just to be clear, like you can and are okay using like just that basic voice memo track. Someone can send that to you, whether it's a vocal or maybe an instrumental take. That's enough for you to be able to keep the thing going.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing I find is like just a vocal or just an instrumental take. That's something I usually ask for after the session's over, kind of thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, like you can use your voice memos app to send little snippets of ideas if you're having trouble communicating, you know, communicating the voice with the sound
Yeah.
over Zoom. Because that's the thing that sucks about just online writing is that you can't just, it's not like being in a room where just one person plays guitar and then the other person sings over top of it, that you can't line that up, you know?
Hmm. Okay, here's a good one. So you had mentioned like iMessage, which yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can share files back and forth, and even between one person or a bunch of individuals. Yeah, the question is like, is there a singular platform or even Google Drive, but like somewhere that is a bit more collaborative from the outset, like where you can post something and right away everyone else is seeing it, has access to that file, like sort of one singular spot that everyone can collaborate and be sending things, and it's all kind of tracked in the same place.
Um, well, I mean, even before the pandemic, one of my choice ways to write in a session was everyone being on Google Docs, even in the room.
Okay, okay.
Because everyone can see, like, we always have our own little
Yeah.
sheet of death of stuff we don't want anyone to see of our ideas. But then there's always that central Google Doc where the lyric, the actual approved, everyone likes this verse, okay, done, boom, um and what's great about that is that all your songs are always in the same place, everyone can access it. um haven't really done that much for audio files. I mean, I just, any sending of quick little 10-second MP3s, we usually just do it on a text thread.
Okay.
And any larger files, just Dropbox or something.
Sure. Okay. Okay, good to know. Davis, Kara, Amy, great question. If cool with you, we'll save that one for a little later, just because it's a bit on its own tangent, but one that Karen will definitely have some insight for. We can keep going along here. So, well, yeah, I guess here, who takes the lead? I suppose that can be kind of arbitrary, but like in your case, is it the case? Like you mentioned Mickey and Carly June up here in Canada, who are artists primarily, and thus, yeah, maybe not the most elaborate technical setups in their residences. All this to ask, have you done any sessions through this though with other folks like you, who are a bit more behind the scenes maestros that do have more elaborate setups? Like, I guess what I'm asking is, I would assume it makes sense for you to sort of take the lead on sessions because you are kind of have that technological hub there. Is that always the case though? Have you done sessions with other people, and like, how do you figure out kind of who's going to take the lead and keep things flowing?
In my case, I am the one in the room that is going to make the demo, so. But that's also just the way my rights are designed. Like
Okay,
I'm not in a write with another producer.
got it.
Um, so there's usually an artist and a top liner that I'm working with. Um, so no, there's not really any, but that's not necessarily the case for other people. That's just the way that my writing schedule is designed.
Yeah, understood. And just we've said it a few times, and no one has asked, so I'm hoping that it's clear in context. But just for folks wondering, by top line, you mean?
Top line, I mean someone who really specializes in the lyric and the melody.
Bingo.
hmm But
All right.
I also should say, like, that doesn't necessarily mean just because I'm the producer in the room doesn't mean that I'm taking the lead. honestly, every session is different, and a lot of the time it's the artist who is taking the lead because they're bringing in an idea that they really like, and then we're all kind of congregating around that idea. Or someone's playing something on guitar, and I feel like in that way it's no different than when people come into my room. Just because they're in my room and I have a recording set up doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to start from a track.
Right.
um it just depends on the day, depends on the artist, depends on what everyone's vibing on.
Cool. Okay. Well, then here, before we carry on, a couple more questions just came in on the tech side. First, and nice and simple, but do you have any experience working with Splice Studio?
Oh yeah, Splice is great. I love it.
You're a fan? Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry, not the studio. Like, I use it for samples and stuff, but no, I haven't actually done the collaborative aspects of it. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I didn't realize those were two separate things when I asked, but I'm sure Shelly did. Okay, but so Splice as a service, yeah, for samples and loops, you're a fan of Splice Studio. Okay,
Yeah.
that answers the question then. They got the first half right. By that I mean Splice, not whoever asked. Sorry, Shelly. And then another one here, and actually this is great because we were just talking before starting that with Carly and Mickey, some of the people you've been working with, that they have gone out and got themselves basic setups. So yeah, you've said that you can absolutely collaborate in a session just with a basic laptop or phone mic and camera. If you were going to offer someone some guidance though on like a simple, and I'm assuming Davis, clarify if I'm wrong, but like just a good quality sort of demoing setup where like maybe you're not going to be outputting stuff direct to Spotify, but want to be able to produce competent vocals and instrumental tracks. Do you have any recommendation on like mic interface, maybe headphones that someone can grab that will get them set up for not too big of a price tag?
Well, I always recommend Logic, especially if you're a songwriter and you're looking to build demos for your songs. It's such a great creation tool, in terms of having a lot of internal sounds that come with it, a lot of loops and things that can be great for just generating ideas.
Nice.
I always think of Pro Tools as more of a like recording to tape, documenting things kind of thing, whereas and needing players in the room. Obviously people use it all sorts of ways, but that's traditionally how I've always thought of it. And Logic always seemed to me like it came from a background of being stronger on the MIDI side and programming, and so I find that as a producer who also like most of the productions I do start very much in the box, just like
Mhm.
a demo for anyone who's here today who would be looking to make a demo for a song they've written. I find Logic's my first language. Been using it a really long time, but I would still recommend it to anyone, and that's what I recommended to Carly. That's what I recommended to Mickey.
Okay.
I feel like it's a really good starting point, and it's not super expensive. Um, Also, I'm a big fan of the Universal Audio products, and they make a great um, interface that's not too expensive. It's the UA Aero. You're getting really high quality preamps, like industry standard preamps.
Rad.
You can't go wrong with it. It's just fantastic, and there's a lot of different features that if you go into it, it just makes your recording experience much more inspiring because of some of the features that it has over a normal interface. It has like a lot of plugins and things, so you can actually hear different effects on your voice while you're singing that don't affect what you're recording into Logic. Like you won't have latency and stuff. So it's very inspiring. I always recommend it. And then in terms of a microphone, it depends on where you're going to be recording and
Okay.
your room. I think um, I my first go to is usually an SM7 if the artist is going to be in a room that is not well treated, and they want the flexibility of recording anywhere because it rejects a lot of the ambient sound. But other options, I mean, I love the Townsend Sphere. It's my go-to mic. It's fantastic because it's like having a mic locker. It's a modeling microphone.
Right.
So it models like you can model 30 different, more than 30, I think, mics, and gives you flexibility so that you can record your guitar with it one kind of mic, and then you can record your voice with another kind of mic. And in terms of modern recording these days, it just gives you a lot of options. But that's the kind of, it's a large diaphragm condenser, so you're picking up your entire room, so you might get into building a vocal tent to try to block out the sound. And so there's a lot of different considerations, and budget. I mean, there's a big price difference between those two microphones, but it depends on what you're recording, what kind of music you're recording, where you're recording it, what you want it to sound like, I think, in terms of microphone.
Okay, no, we got some specific endorsements, and then I think from there, based on your advice, yeah, depending on what room you're in, I think you head on to some forums, you'd be able to find that. All right, one more from Shelly. Which UA preamp do you find works best with the SM7B for the vocal signal chain? Oh, SM7B being so heavy in the low end, Shelly is no stranger.
Yeah. Well, we've been using it with Mickey on her vocals, and I've been loving the Neve 1073 preamp. And just, I don't like to do too much to the sound coming in, but I'll just goose the top end a little bit, and of course do some rolling off of the low end. But the rest I'll do in, after the fact, and EQ it some more. And I usually end up boosting a bit more around 6K, like a wide, just but I like that into, and then I actually like to usually throw like 1176 Rev A on that, the blue stripe, and just, puts it in a really nice place.
Love it. Okay, well, I was hoping this would be the case. We've got questions coming from everywhere. Ravina, and I don't mean to be presumptuous here, but you did mention Google Docs earlier. Yeah, Ravina's wondering if you have a recommendation for an app or software in a live session for lyric writing. Everyone in the session sometimes ends up writing their own notes, iPads, etc., and just to make sure people aren't missing things and getting lost. Yeah, you mentioned Google Docs. Are there others that you've tried or like?
No, I feel like Google Docs is pretty accessible for most people. You don't have to buy any third-party software. Most everyone has some kind of a Google account at this point, so it's usually the easiest.
Bang on. Okay. Yeah, so then to keep things flowing, and I guess we've touched on some of these, but one that I remember you saying just as we were preparing for this is that you found that for virtual sessions, that simple instrumentation seems to keep things going a bit more. So like you would bounce out a beat maybe or something basic at the beginning, but that you find yourself grabbing the acoustic more frequently than trying to work things out in the box. Do I remember that right? And why is that?
Well, I feel like if I start cranking a fuller production into Zoom, it kind of takes over and no one can hear themselves. Like no one can talk over that. So it's not like being in a room where I can have it playing in the background and we can all be sharing ideas over top of it.
Right.
I feel like what I will use a beat for in writes is more to keep us on track with direction. Especially if the song leans a little more pop or has a certain edge to the beat or the tempo. Because sometimes if we're just playing it on a guitar, you don't really get where that's going to go eventually. And also, your tempos can vary wildly. So sometimes that just helps keep us focused. But I'll use it more as a reference, play it here or there. And then, usually more than one person in the right has an instrument ready to go, whether it's a keyboard or guitar, because we can't jam out to each other. I can't play the guitar for my co-writer to sing to. So ideally, if they also play an instrument, then they can also be sitting there with their guitar, play the same chords on their end and sing along, or on a keyboard. And so that's really useful. If everyone can be sitting there, we're all on the same page. I play the chords and sing what I'm hearing. They play the chords and sing that back to me, add something, we're all kind of hearing that bouncing around.
Okay, bang on. And then, yeah, I guess the last two kind of go hand in hand, but yeah, when you're together in a room, it's just a bit more freedom and easier communication that, if I need to step away and just hum something to myself or whatever, that's obvious and maybe more fluid. So yeah, I guess tell us a little bit about, like, in longer sessions, just the idea of like being able to step away for a few minutes. And I think I remember I've got mute button is a good tool, because I think there was a case that if you've got maybe three people with an acoustic guitar in their lap, if someone's trying to buckle down and figure something out that can do the public good and just kind of do the virtual equivalent of going to sit in the corner for a few minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes some people find that useful. Or if I'm like going to start putting together the little bit of a beat and I don't
Yeah.
want to be drowning out my co-writers, I'll mute myself and program it in. And then as soon as I've got it, I'll be like, okay, guys, here's to get us going. So yeah, that can be handy to mute yourself for a bit. Some people find it useful.
Right on. And I guess all of this is just making me think too, like, and you're probably into it now, having done so many of these, but just like really considering the environment that you're in. I was on a Zoom call with family over the weekend and like shared my screen to show them some stupid meme about like you can pick X animals to defend. Anyway, it was so dumb. And then we just kept talking about something more serious, and I could see everybody, but I was like, wait a second, are you guys still looking at crocodiles and water buffalo and stuff? And they're like, yeah. And I was, oh, I had basically just hijacked the whole session. All this to say, being more considerate about who's seeing and hearing what to make things go fluid. And I guess that's across the board, family movie nights or important songwriting sessions. Anywho, okay, so yeah, there was just a few other things here that, again, we were talking about. You started this, or earlier on had mentioned, like, before the COVID pandemic, this was not your bag and you just weren't interested in the whole virtual thing. Obviously, had your hand forced a little bit here, but I would just love to hear about some of the things that you've learned. And I guess starting here, just some of the differences, maybe pros and cons, hoping that there are some pros to this method, but yeah, some of the differences between in-person co-writes and our newfound reality, and just how that's affecting everybody's workflows.
Well, I mean, there's certain things about writing in a room, yeah, that you just can't duplicate, which we've kind of already touched on in terms of the jamming out together.
Sure.
I find that the Zoom co-writes tend to be a little more focused, and sometimes are finished quicker. Maybe just because we're all just staring at each other on a screen. And there's also less of like hey, we've been at this for a bunch of hours. Why don't we all take a lunch break and go get a burger? Like you just can't do that. So it can be a little more efficient. Obviously the downsides kind of still make it such that I know that when it is safe to get back in a room together, we're going to definitely want to still be doing that. But it definitely makes it possible to connect with people who aren't in your city. And I think now that we've all kind of been dragged into writing online, it's going to be something that's going to stay as an option, I think. Might not be the first choice, but it's definitely an option.
I guess I'm just trying to help sell the sizzle a bit here, but if I'm grasping at straws, please tell me. But yeah, that was one thing I was thinking of, is just like with your Rolodex, borrowing an antiquated metaphor, but with your professional network, like the idea that if you and I were writing together and it was like, oh, I'd really like to hear what some, a good banjo lead would sound like here, that like maybe one of the advantages here is that you can just shoot somebody a text and within the snap of a finger, they could be right there in the writing room, kind of thing. Have you had any anecdotes like that, or just kind of spur of the moment things where Zoom kind of stepped up?
Not really, not that way. No, sorry.
I tried. In theory, it made sense.
We all tend to be pretty much like, let's write a great song. And then that's basically the focus at that point. I think we've all given up on like getting too fancy with it,
Gotcha. All right. Well then, yeah, I get it. The last one then is just, in that idea of workflow and fluidity, like you mentioned, if everyone's together and a coffee or burger break, kind of one person means everybody's affected. That things can carry on, and I keep saying fluid, but be a little more fluid. What about then, like in between sessions, like or just that idea of getting to a point where it's like, okay, let's go back on our own and chew on some of this and then come back to the fold. Like, has that differed at all from in person, where there's just kind of the overall topology of how a song might come together, and just taking breaks, working independently, coming back into the virtual space? Is there any difference in that front?
Not really. It's still, I would say it's still very close to the in-person reality of, most of the time we finish a song. Um, if we're all hitting a wall, we'll book another Zoom write and have the same kind of time in between writes to be able to think about the song, come back another day. Um, the one thing that is different for me as the producer in the room is that in with an in-person write, I would immediately be getting a vocal from the artist that day in my room, in my vocal booth. Boom, I'm ready to go to keep working on the demo after everyone leaves. And in this case, that's a lot more challenging depending on, the individual setups that other people have. Sometimes it takes a really long time to get a vocal from someone. Sometimes you never get a vocal. Sometimes you get a vocal right away, but it might be a voice memo. So it's taken just, being flexible and working with people and just hoping that you can get a demo out of it at the end of the day to show for what you did.
Okay, right on. Well, there we go. Let's jump into the cue period here. There was one thing I was going to spit out there. Oh, that yes. Earlier you mentioned in the context of voice memos that Isotope RX is your friend. And once again, just for anyone listening, that is a suite of audio correction and restoration and just fine tuning tools, kind of the industry standard as far as taking a less than desirable track and fixing it up to the best of its ability. So there you go. Maybe that's one like a lot of people have been leaning on lately, and maybe do all the time.
I mean, it's always useful. I actually, I have no link with this company, but I actually saw they're having a sale for like $29, and you can get uh, Isotope RX Essentials, which has some of their main plugins from the suite. I think probably they're being smart because probably a lot of people are using it right now for that kind of stuff. So they're like, hey, let's have a sale. Um, but yeah, you could like declip, denoise, deverb. So like if you have a vocal that's got a lot of ambience, you're hearing the room, that can I've found that can help a lot. They, get rid of some of the noise floor, hiss, just trying a bunch of things to make something sound a little bit more quality.
Okay. Great question, and I'm remiss. I guess we never really hit this one head on, even though we might have danced around it a bit. But yeah, AA is wondering, on average, how long do you spend in one songwriting session? And I know that can mean a lot of different things, but yeah, how long is a in-person writing session versus how long you might stick around in Zoom, and does that vary at all?
I feel like there are similarities. I mean, generally in person, writes tend to be anywhere from 3 to 6 hours, anywhere in there.
Hmm.
Sometimes 2 hours. I've had one or two that go really fast, even on Zoom. Zoom can be very much the same. Um, so it's not that different. Although I feel like maybe, like I said, it's a little more focused, so maybe it's a little quicker. It's also quicker to just be able to jump into something else right away afterwards when all you're doing is closing an app on your computer. You can have
Yeah.
another. I can be starting a vocal session with someone who's in LA right away in another Zoom room.
Well, that leads beautifully into Christine's question then, is that like given your rights are virtual now and in some of these ways, like you were just talking about, more efficient or at least less time consuming, do you find yourself, are you a bit busier, maybe on some days even just able to fit more into a day comfortably?
Yeah, I feel it feels like it. I feel like I can fit more in. I will say though that I feel like um something I sometimes feel, and I know other friends of mine have expressed, is writing on Zoom and just being on Zoom all day with people can be really draining in a
Sure.
way that the in-person stuff sometimes isn't. Um, so it's this balancing act, you know?
I know exactly what you mean. How much do I have to stare at my own dumb little head in the corner or something? Um,
Hide self-view, yes.
Right. Um, well, there we go. And I guess on that note of being able to bounce from one thing to another, if anyone's got any additional questions, throw them in now. If not, though, I'm very easy to find, CanadianMusician.com. All of our emails are there. KarenKosowski.com, of course, for our esteemed presenter, to whom I'm very grateful. But yeah, if you've got any additional questions or more specifically, some potential for collaboration, feel free, hit up Karen. Oh, there was one. I didn't go back to Davis's earlier question. They had asked about the best way. So as I said, it was a little off topic, but you would be a great one to answer. The best way to, and they said label, to pitch songs you're working on to a label. But I'm thinking, Karen, of you as sort of a gatekeeper and someone with a really good network. If there was a writer out there that was interested in maybe showing you some of the things they could do, or just looking to get a foot into the industry with their writing, do you have any suggestions on that side?
I feel like in general, you're gonna have better luck as a songwriter. Like as a producer, sometimes I rarely am looking for outside songs for my artists. The artists sometimes get pitched them through their labels from
Right.
publishers. Um, but I feel like if you're a songwriter and you're looking to try to get cuts, one of the best things you can do is write with an artist. Look around yourself and find artists that you can access
Hmm.
and ask them if they want to collaborate and just try some collaborations. Um, I've had songs of mine cut by artists who didn't co-write on those songs, but a lot of the cuts I've had have been writing with that artist, and the artist feels invested in that song and believes in that song and feels like it's saying something that they want to say and that came from them. Um, and I feel like that's something that's more important now than ever. So you're going to have your best luck that way. Um, Otherwise, yeah, I mean, you can always publishers like to get stuff from artists. I mean, I've sent my stuff, when I was looking for, um, you know, getting connections in Nashville and kind of trying to get on the writing scene. It was definitely mostly word of mouth, but publishers would ask me to send them some songs, and then I would send them stuff, and then they could hear what I do, and then they'd think of other writers that they had on their roster or people that they knew that might be good fits, and that's how those things came together. But before that, it was all like word of mouth and just writing within the people that are kind of in your tribe, like finding the people that are looking to collaborate at whatever level you're at, and everyone kind of rises together and everyone kind of builds something together, and that's you're going to have a lot more luck that way than trying to aim for, like, hey, I want a Carrie Underwood cut, because
Mhm.
that's like pretty tough.
Yeah. The North Star. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Jerry, thanks for joining us. Jerry's wondering how he can connect with Karen. KarenKosowski.com. Hit about. You can read about, I mentioned heavily decorated. You can see why. And then at the bottom there, licensing inquiries. You can contact Maya at Sony ATV. Again, congrats on the deal. Or production inquiries, Karen at KarenKosowski.com. It's right there, out in public. And yeah, again, we're easy to find too if you want to throw some cues. That'll do us here. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Come out for our next session. We're going to be talking about everything you need to know before you enter the studio. Harrison Fine from Toronto's joining us, nwcwebinars.com. If you registered for this and are hearing me now, you will get an email to a recording of this session at this time tomorrow, or probably a little bit sooner. Feel free to share, come back to it. Karen, I am very grateful, and if you care to see, and I'll send you these tomorrow, but there's a steady stream of gratitude from our guests here. So thank you from all of us. This has been
Thanks. Thanks, Andrew. This has been great.